Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is Free Text Invoice, Enhanced Posting Performance, Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. My name is Brad, and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this session through Teams live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. When you join this event, your name, email address, and/or phone number may be viewable by other session participants in the attendee list. By joining, you're agreeing to this experience. The recording will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within the coming weeks. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the event and in the Q&A segment near the end. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Saurabh Kuchhal, Senior Solution Architect. Saurabh, over to you.
Hey, thank you, Brad. Thank you for facilitating this session. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Today, the topic is free text invoicing. We call it FTI in short as well, and we will all talk about how we can enhance the performance of this free text invoice posting. We will share multiple features, and I have the crew with me. I have Ryan Carlson, Jason Dinam, Kerry Michelle, Eric Vigors, and myself here, and we will all help you to share all the knowledge we got here in this Tech Talk. Just a quick brief, what we will cover in this Tech Talk. We have added multiple performance improvements to the batch posting of source documents in order to run free text invoicing more efficiently. This particular feature, the first feature we will show, this is going to affect free text invoicing in the first, but as we go in future, more and more source document postings will also be added into it. When this feature is enabled, batch posting is actually split into smaller units of work, preventing system degradation and also lessening the chances of issues due to database disconnections. So let's dive in. This is implementation guide. This is written by Fast Track team, and it has guidance pretty much on all the areas from initiate, build, design, deploy, and all the way to operate phase. And it also covers pretty much from both finance and operations as well as on the customer engagement, all Dynamics 365 apps. Highly recommend this guide. Please keep it handy at your end. If you are looking for something, see if you can find it here. And this is a great reference document. Cool. Let's see what we will cover today, right? As I mentioned in previously, we will talk about the free text invoicing, the performance improvements we are doing. We will first understand what is the problem today. Then we will talk about the solution, how we are approaching the design of it, as well as we will see what changes we have done in the whole posting process. We will have a demo. Ryan will do the demo for us of FTI, how the new solution works and everything. We will also share other two features here after the demo, which are also going to help in the performance with the free text invoicing. We'll also share some key takeaways, the recommendations you can think of, which we have gathered based on many projects experience. So please stay tuned for key takeaways. We will have good time for Q&A and live Q&A as well. So I highly recommend you guys, please ask questions in the Q&A chat. We will answer them on the side, as well as whatever the top questions we get, we will definitely answer them live as well in the end. All right, so what is the problem? The problem is performance, right? You must have got that so far. So all the enterprise customers, like big customers, they do bring high volumes, like millions of invoice lines. They need to process them in timely manner. Like monthly billing is happening. You are getting, let's say, your utility bill, and the company needs to process those bills in a timely manner. I'm talking about same thing with from the scale perspective too. So it is not about the infrastructure. You give high power to it, and you think like posting or code will scale. That's not how it works, right? So this particular feature we will share, we will talk about is about changing the process, and that's where we are able to get that scale with this feature. So And without this feature, even if we add more infra, we are not able to get that scale. So this will help with that. Another impact on the performance comes to non-ledger posting operation. So we'll hit into that more in the next slide as well. But more importantly, there are two types of roles, and we will talk about those. But yes, if my posting is not done, I cannot send the invoices to customers. I cannot send them the invoice statements. I cannot send I cannot do the payment settlements for them. And this is really important, right, for enterprise customers' readiness in terms of having the system available and work on timely basis. What is the another problem? The separation of duties. I did hit on this one in the last slide too, but little more. We have two different roles: AR clerk, who is accounts receivable, managing all the invoicing, recordings, and doing the payments. And there is accountant who is also looking for free text invoice posted ones. He's primarily looking into ledger transactions, the vouchers, or any errors related to on the journalizations or dimensions kind of things. So these are two different roles in an organization, and they both have different needs from the free text invoices or any of those documents, right? So that's the idea behind how we do separation also of these duties so that they both are not blocked on each other. So we will hit into both the problems, performance as well as separation of duties with the solution. So we'll talk about that solution too. Before that, what we are seeing based on the telemetry where the free text invoices is getting used heavily. These are some of the industries which we see they are using free text invoice much more than any other industries. Utilities, right, which I did hit earlier as well, services or subscription based companies, medical billings, leases, rentals, donations, which are recurring, and workforce, or like where you are giving services on the recurring basis, those kind of things. They all are great examples, and there could be many, many more. Yours and your customers may be using it for something other in some other industry too. So definitely free text invoices are highly recommended, something you need without inventory, simple invoicing, so and can bring a scale to your environment. Let's talk about the solution now, right? We did hit into the problem, performance, and separation of duties. How do we solve this problem? I will give the floor to Ryan. Ryan, let's talk about the solution here.
All right, thanks, Saurabh. My name is Ryan Carlson. I am one of the product managers for the Dynamics 365 Finance application. And this is a feature that I was allowed to be a part of, and it's a wonderful enhancement for performance in this feature area. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide that gives the current kind of process, I guess, around a free text invoice. These are all just different units that are comprised of activities along a free text invoice document in the life cycle of it. So obviously, once this document, the free text invoice, is created, there's some accounting distributions that can get created with that. There's a process to calculate totals. There's a journalized process, and that's really generating that full accounting in our subledger that is representing that full voucher transaction that we're going to send off to the general ledger. That has to happen alongside of the posting. So a posted invoice document is also where you record that invoice to your accounts receivable subledger. And so today we can see that bottom kind of grouping. All of that work is happening generally in a one big unit together, a single database transaction essentially. And so as this is again looking at the life of just one document as it would move through all the activities that need to happen for that one document. So as mentioned a bit ago, the industries that are using free text invoices often are billing systems that'll bring in when the billing is completed, they've got to represent that as an invoice to their customers, and they can bring that in and represent that with the free text invoice interface. And so they'll have thousands and thousands, if not millions of lines total in a month they may have to process. And so one by one, each one of those documents is doing all of this work in one transaction, and then it can start the next document, and then it can start the next document. And even in a multi-threaded environment, there's contention that happens. So that's the root of the problem that we're attempting to solve with this feature. So let's go ahead and look at the next slide. So the enhanced process with this feature turned on allows for a little more granular breakdown of those units of work. The two that are impacted the most with the feature that we'll demo are in darker green subledger being posted from the documents path. And then on the accounting path, we're trying to separate those two units in their own flow. So the document can have its own life where we create that document. We do that total calculation. We'll see another feature later on after the demo that's helping with that. And then the subledger recording it to your accounts receivable. That can happen, and we can disconnect the underlying accounting activities that are happening and put those into their own units of work, their own database transactions essentially, and let those occur so much more efficiently with this feature on that all of that work together happens with very little, much less contention as that's happening in a large batch of documents. Okay, so as you can imagine, when we disconnect these two experiences and talking about recording something to the subledger, that accounts receivable invoice is recorded for a customer. So now against that customer, there's a bunch of invoices and that goes out on their statement, but that accounting is disconnected now. If we take that and make that its own unit of work, that is a bit of a disconnect in the application, and we have to be able to deal with that disconnect if there's some error state or even if there's just a delay and there's a queue of work piled up. So that's what we can see on the next slide. It's one of the new forms that's being delivered. So actually, before we get to that, I guess to see what this feature is, we'll look at this in the demo as well. So this is the name of the feature that you'll see in feature management. So the enhanced performance for source document accounting framework. And as also mentioned, we want to enable other documents besides just free text invoice, but this is our first one that we're going to tackle. So dealing with that, there is a new form that we'll demo as part of the flow. And that's this documents pending accounting form that we can use to look at any error states and also just things that have landed in the queue and are not completed yet. Because this tells us we have a free text invoice. It's got an invoice document ID that's been generated in our AR subledger, but the journalization step is not yet completed. And that means it doesn't have all the full accounting generated on the accounting level. So with that, let's go ahead and I think at the next slide we can jump into the demo. So I'll share my demo environment and get started. All right, so in my demo environment, the first screen I have open is just the feature management workspace. So in our workspaces, feature management is where we can turn on any new features that exist in the product as each monthly update comes out or each update of the application comes. And this is the name of the feature. And again, the reason that we're naming that is we intend for other documents that utilize our source document framework to be able to take advantage of that improved performance. And again, what that is trying to accomplish in the description here tells us it's just splitting up the work into smaller units and preventing issues because of database disconnections, etc. So in my environment, I already have this feature turned on. It's enabled and running. So now that I have that, let's jump into the free text invoice list page. Here's where I can create a new free text invoice document. And let's just clarify what this document is for those that may not have been here before. This is not a sales order, but it's very similar to a sales order in that I can record some sale or record that invoice, that bill to a customer that I have in my environment, something that I deal business with. It does not have any connection to inventory, so you can't sell items, but I can just simply, as I go through the demo, I'll create a new document. I'll pick one of my favorite customers. Let that populate. And then as you can scroll down, the invoice lines that I can generate are simply that, a free text description that has all the detail I can put onto this invoice line. So I just have a test line that I'm going to add, and I can specify a main account for where I want that charge to occur against, the revenue to come in against. So I'll just put in a simple amount, save that. And now I'm ready to post this document. So as I plan to do my posting, Here's where we will intercept with this feature. It has to run in the background in batch. So this batch processing is turned on. And again, we're just testing a simple one document. But as you can imagine, a number of invoices get created or imported into the system, potentially from those other billing systems that might be utilized for those industries. Now I have a large batch of these invoices, and I will send them off and tell that entire batch to go ahead and post. And they will utilize that new, that's when we can utilize the new feature that we've just described. So when it's not running a batch, it'll do the old code path and it'll generate everything directly in one go, one large database transaction. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this one set to run in batch. Let's click OK, and we'll just give it a little bit of time. You can see that it's now added to the batch queue. So this invoice is sent to the batch. It'll let the batch system go ahead and process it, and we notice the prior most recent document was highest number was 30, so we should expect 31 to be the invoice as we refresh. Get this one more minute for the environment to refresh, and sure enough, there's invoice number 31 is now generated in this environment. Now the next part, we can see there's a difference of the accounting status column. That's a key thing I'm going to call out that's different for this feature turned on. So the invoice is now posted. I can look at this customer and they'll have an invoice of 31 generated for that customer. However, the accounting is still in process. It is not complete. To take a look at the difference of what that means, let's take a look at invoice 28 that is completed. I can see from selecting that invoice 28 is completed, I can check the accounting. And again, one way to look at it is simply looking at the accounting that's been generated. I have a full subledger journal number that's been recorded for that invoice. So everything that's going to be transferred to the general ledger is here, fully recorded. You can look at a preview of that accounting. So if I click on the same button for an invoice that's in process, the view accounting will only give us a preview of what it should be. There is no subledger journal number specified yet for this preview. It's just simply a expectation of what that accounting should be as it gets moved to the general ledger. Let's take another look, and here's where we can jump over to the new form that I mentioned that we're delivering with this feature. This form is found in General Ledger module under the periodic tasks. Here's a new form called Documents Pending Accounting. I have this form opened, and I'm going to go ahead and refresh this form. And sure enough, now I have invoice number 31 is now in the list in the queue. It is in process. It is not complete. But we may notice that we can also see documents that have an error state. So we can see invoice 29, accounting state is an error. And I can drill in and look at what the error message is and why I have a problem. So here I can see that cost center 09 is not an allowed value. So there's an accounting error. The AR clerk may have no idea what to do with that. And so that's a wonderful separation of our duty. I can have my accountant fix the distributions. So now I can see the other feature is at the top, I have a button to view the distributions for this document. And there we were talking about cost center 09 is not an allowed value. That is incorrect. So let's clear that out. And I can see it looks like maybe I mistyped and it should have been cost center 7. That's an allowed value. So I'll specify cost center 7 for this document on the accounting line. Go ahead and save that change. And I do want to call out one other difference. As I look at the view distributions, there's no other changes that we can make. We can't tell it to be a different amount. Those edits won't be saved. The only thing we can change is the ledger account. I can fix the accounting, save that process. And now if I'm ready, I can one by one use this other button that's available on this form is to generate that accounting one by one. So I'll go ahead and do that for this invoice 29. And you can see that it's been submitted for processing. So I can go ahead and refresh that. 29 will disappear from my queue. And if I wanted to switch back, I can look at invoice 29. I'll refresh my invoice from the invoice page. And that lets that process. We'll give it just a moment. And sure enough, invoice 29 is now a completed state. So that accounting is fully there. Again, I can look at the accounting. They can see that everything is existing and a subledger journal number has been assigned. This one is fully ready to transfer to the general ledger. and move to that accounting there. So now let's take a look at what if this list was large, if I had several thousand invoices been posted to the AR subledger, but they have not completed the accounting step. So there's I haven't mentioned, but there is a background process that's taking care of all of that work to move data from or to generate all that accounting data for us once we have these invoices that have been posted. So how do we handle that? Well, we're using the process automation as a background process. Process automation administrative page is found under system administration under the setup group. Towards the end is process automation. That page will open. Initially, it'll be on a scheduled task. There may not anything scheduled in your environment, but there is always a background processes that we're delivering in each new application release. And the one that's being utilized for that process to journalize and generate that accounting is the accounting framework processor. Right here we can see is in our environment, it's up and running, and it'll run every 15 minutes. So that queue of documents will get cleared out every 15 minutes by default. As an administrator, you're fully able to come in and edit that, make that interval, whatever it seems to make sense for that business. Okay. So with that, I will.
And just to add here, right, everyone, you can see the most recent results. It will also show you how many records it processed or were there any issues even here. You can see the log, view log, success or error right here as well. You can obviously find it in one of the batch job too, but this is one of the easiest way for an accountant to go back and find out, okay, how did my journalization accounting happen here? And by the way, if you notice here, we will hit this into later part also. 2 down, you will see batch transfer to subledger journals as well. This is also required as part of completing the posting process, ultimately to hit the GLs. And that also is coming from here as a background process.
Yes, thanks, Saurabh. Exactly. All right, we'll turn it back to Saurabh.
Okay, let me share my screen back. All right, thank you, Ryan, for the demo. This was helpful. Team, we saw, right, how we can have the divide and conquer and get the required performance and get the required separation of duties, right? We looked at how we can just do the journalization and also talk about how can we fix it. Even the posting is happened, we can fix the dimensions and those kind of things on that invoice. Okay, so this is a good one. Free text invoice posting performance, right? How do we see without this feature and with this feature, the comparison, right, in the throughput? So when we say performance is the main thing, right, for building this whole feature, how do we see it's impacting on the numbers? We did check it with various numbers. By the way, when we processed it, we gave it the volume. If you do less number of invoicing, you may not see the impact. If you try with 50, 100,000 invoices, you may not see the impact. But if you try with like 500,000 invoicing or million invoices, you will see definitely this kind of difference for sure. And within those free text invoice headers, we also did various combinations of 1 line per header or 5 lines per header, or we went above like 30 lines per header. As you see the graph, with more lines, you are getting better throughput per lines. And when we enabled this feature, we could see really 2x, 3x, 4x type of difference in the throughput of the same number of lines. So with 1 line, obviously the throughput difference was lesser, but as the 30 lines, you can see the difference between blue and orange line right here. It's way more. So that really helped to achieve the throughput our customers, our large customers were looking. They have been using this feature, and this is really a big step to get the achieve optimal performance if you are looking for that. All right, so let's talk about next steps, right? So we did talk about this feature a lot. Now we have few more things to share. The critical ones. We'll talk about some new features as well, but before that, let's hit into what are the next business process coming, right? If you are using free text invoicing, this is definitely must for you. But if you are looking for something else, these are the ones which are coming next. Vendor invoices. This is where next in the next waves, this will be the next one, which will be using the same divide and conquer approach to split the posting into posting and as well as journalization. Same with product receipts, then project advance journal, bank statements, and there could be others too based on the feedbacks and based on how these other postings process goes. These all are source document related process. So you will not see sales order or purchase order here, but yes, if you think those are also a thing we should follow in the same approach, please use Ideas portal, give your voice so that those also can be heard and also can be bubble up to achieve similar concept to divide and conquer those posting process performance. Okay, so this is the feature we just demoed, enhanced performance for source document accounting framework. This is the feature name you will see in the feature management. And let's talk about the availability of it, how it will come. So it was in preview on the flighted, I would select private preview in 10.29 with 10.30. You can have it available in your environment now, which is GA already in October. And as the time goes, based on the feedback, we will definitely make it released in the coming time, and ultimately it will become a mandatory feature for free text invoicing. So we also said we'll show two more features. This is the second feature, guys, the calculation of tax. So what happens whenever the free text invoice posting is happening? Behind the scene, it is doing the calculations for totals and taxes multiple times. I said tax, my bad, for totals. So, and what we have done with this feature is we have improved the cache use of that calculation. We are seeing some good results with this feature as well. So highly recommend it if you are looking something quick wins. This is the easy one. You enable this feature, free text invoice posting performance for totals calculation, and it will use that in the posting time in the batch. There is one more. Oh no, this is the availability for the same one, totals calculation. So this will be also in public preview in 10.30. Then it will from 10.30. This is the major release where it will be released off by default. But from the next major release, which will be in October 23, it will be on by default. And then in future, we will make this feature also mandatory. Third feature, third and last. This is the last feature we will talk about today, but this is the most important one, I will call it, right? The batch posting process improvement. What we have done with this feature, we are using one of the multi-threading pattern, which is called top picking pattern, to manage the number of threads to allocate to the posting process. This when you enable priority-based batch scheduling feature, which basically removes the batch group and batch server allocation, this feature is really important to use in case of free text invoicing posting. What it will do, it will allocate the fixed number of threads for your posting process, and in that way you can get the optimal performance and avoid any system downtimes or crashes if you go with PBS on and without this feature. So when will this feature be available? This feature will be available in 10.31. It will come in January, and at that moment it will be in public preview. And by the time it's major release in April, it will be released and off by default. So you can definitely use it in production that time. It will be on by default from 10.36, and then in future it will also become mandatory. Okay, so we are coming towards the end. Let's talk about the key takeaways based on our learnings from free text invoicing posting. We have been working on these features and testing it from last more than a year, and this is what we want to share with you. Please do performance load testing, a recurring testing, where you can take that load again and again and test it based on these features. We highly recommend enable all of those features if you can. If not, for whatever reasons, yeah, please try to do more and more so that you can see the latest and greatest features coming and get those optimal performances you are looking for. There is one caveat we definitely want to mention about the feature of divide and conquer. I call it enhanced performance for source document. If you are using auto settlement, then you will not be able to use that. It will go to old logic. If you are doing posting in interactive mode, as Ryan also mentioned in the demo, it will not go to the split logic. It will go to basically all the way in the linear way, what we showed earlier. If you're using the localization of Hungary, and also if you are using free text invoicing with retail on, with the via retail POS, you are creating the retail transactions and creating free text invoice, then also it will not go here. I did mention this one, the third point here, free text invoice batch posting for process improvement. This will definitely help you if you are turning on priority-based batch scheduling and you are facing some challenges with that. And it's coming in 10.31. Last but not the least, this is subledger journal transfer. This job has been in system from very long time. And what we have seen is if you want to achieve better performance with subledger posting, please change it to async batch transfer mode, not the scheduled batch mode. What I mean with that is, let me show you a quick demo over here where it is. So if you go to general ledger parameters, you will see batch transfer rules. And this is the setup batch transfer rules for subledger journal account entries. And the transfer mode, for if you are struggling with the performance with it, keep it as asynchronous. And what it will do, it will use what we showed in the demo, the process automation framework. You saw that job 2 down. It was about the subledger to GL transfer, and this is what process automation framework will pick on from the asynchronous one. All right, I think we are coming towards the end. It has been a brief demo. We talked about 3 features, and yeah, if you have any questions, as we said earlier, we will have ample time for Q&A over here. And yeah, I will ask Eric, who has been monitoring our chats for Q&A, if we have any interesting question which we need to pick over here.
There were a couple of questions related to the individual steps, either retrying, when one step fails, it needs to be retried, and and the idea is that each step is independent, and retrying a step doesn't, if a step fails and then retries, it doesn't really change the end result, right? Once it makes it through a step, that step is complete and it's more or less independent from the last steps. One specific question was, what about a difference between the subledger and the GL until the transfer happens? And that is true, but that's been that way for quite a while, ever since source documents came around, right? You have to run the GL transfer, and the asynchronous option ultimately runs it quite quickly. So using that, it's more or less independent of this change. But if you use asynchronous for your batch transfers, your GL should not be far behind your subledger. Yeah. I don't know if Jason or Ryan has anything to add, but
I'll just add that this, like you said, it's typically you see the schedules on the process automation. It was 5 minutes for transfer and 15 minutes. You can adjust that down if you like to see that happening faster. But there is a small amount of time where your subledger and your general ledger don't have the same amounts. We have obviously the reconciliation reports, and we also have the new window that we provided if you ever need to verify, like at month end, that everything is in sync.
Yeah, I think I'm going to jump in. I know there's a handful of questions there, Saurabh, that are coming in.
Yeah,
related.
and before that, I just want to reiterate one thing, Ryan, or maybe you, is these all are separate flows now, separate processes. The whole thing of posting is divided into, let's say, 3 posting processes. One for doing the free text invoicing posting, one is doing the journalization, and one is doing the transfer to GL. With these smaller scope transactions, we are able to achieve that performance. And these all are running in their own flows. So if something is not ready, let's say not posted to subledger here, it will not do the journalization. If something is not journalized, it will not go to the next steps. So you are safe there. If something failed for particular record, you in the next run, it will pick it up.
And just to note as well, we've also added features in other areas of the product, like at period close, we verify that there aren't any documents that have not generated the accounting yet. So we don't let you close the period until all the accounting's been generated, to ensure that there isn't a mistake, because once the period is closed, obviously then we can't generate accounting into that period. So that's why we do that additional validation check.
Yeah, so and jumping into, I know there's a handful of questions, Saurabh, with the extra form and the ability to change the dimensions, and the concern with maybe the inconsistency between the document and the voucher that's generated and sent to the general ledger. And just to kind of clarify a little bit more, we can drill into this and maybe update our documentation that's been published, just to be very crisp on what can't be changed and how that impacts the difference between the subledger and accounts receivable and the voucher in the general ledger. So the one difference would be, we were only changing the accounting distribution. That accounting distribution is tied just to the free text invoice line. And so that free text invoice line is really just a revenue account that you're hitting for that invoice. And all of the customer transaction itself that has a dimension, that will be coming from the free text invoice header record itself. We didn't change that, and that would not be a direct discrepancy. There might be a few scenarios we can still look at and make sure that there's not something strange, but a lot of it is where we would allow the end users to have a completely different set of dimensions on the accounting distributions today without the feature enabled. And those would not be the same dimensions that are utilized on your customer transaction that gets recorded in your accounts receivable subledger. So the hope is, or the goal of this whole feature, is that we didn't really change any functionality that wasn't there already today. We're really just making it faster and a little bit of functionality in there with that form. Let's see, we got a few more questions coming in.
Yeah, Ryan, here's one. What would be the total number of new batch tasks I need to schedule so that it acts like it does today?
Yeah, so with these features turned on, the goal is that there really is just the one large batch of free text invoices that you schedule, you send it off. And so we don't have to worry about it with that second, or kind of was that third feature mentioned in the slide deck. All of these together should make it is almost as hands-off as possible for that big batch of invoices that are coming in at a night process. You schedule it when you want it to start, and then you can kind of help queue that accounting framework processor. If we give that's why that 15-minute delay was kind of a good middle ground to start with. Tweak it for your environment so that you can say all of the invoicing batch will happen as fast as it can. Then it'll start running the journalization and getting all that accounting generated kind of a little bit later, a little delay there. But you should be able to just use that one big batch. And one of the others that are technical on the batch threads, I don't think we need to mess with the individual batch setting as well with the new features turned on.
Yeah, just to add, right, when you have PBS on, you should not worry about how many batch threads or batch tasks I need to give. When you turn on this particular feature, it will automatically calculate behind the scene. It has that smart logic, and it will know, okay, how many threads best for your environment will be. And also one more thing I want to highlight here is you might be using this particular field, documents per task, right, to optimize the batch and posting processing. When you use the third feature, which we mentioned over here, this field is not of use. So whatever you set here, it will not matter. Why? Because we are going for another pattern which will have the fixed number of threads, and it will automatically work in the optimal way with the new posting process. So yeah, we don't want you to move or think how many batch tasks I need to give for each job. That all should be smart enough. System should take care of it. If the threads are available, it will take care of them.
Ryan and Saurabh, if one other question here, and you might need to clarify the question a little bit, but I think you know enough to do that. What if the accounting processing failed and cannot be fixed for certain lines under the header? Would the line status be not posted? What about what happens to the header status in that scenario?
Go ahead.
I can comment on that a little bit. So the status from the subledger perspective, because this is, again, these things are separate. They've always been separate statuses, separate tasks. They just were combined in a single database transaction. So the status of the lines and the header, are posted. When we go to generalize the accounting, there's, we've looked at all the different scenarios, and we're able to fix, all the different types of accounting issues that come up. Sometimes it's bad rules on the account structure. Sometimes it's incorrect defaulting changes, but we're able to adjust those through either changing the accounts and the dimensions, or by, updating the accounting rules to, allow the proper posting, because those are the typical types of mistakes. Ryan, you want to add on to that?
Well, I'll just say quick before Ryan, that it sounds like if you get into that scenario, you probably need to open a support case because it's sort of not expected. Go ahead, Ryan, if you have anything.
Yeah, it was, I guess, from a free text invoice. I'm not sure that there is a line status that we're tracking. The status that we had on the list page was the accounting status for that entire document. And so the accounting for the set of lines will be either completed or still in process. And in process would represent if, that you only get to see the error state on the documents pending accounting. And that would give you the error and the error log to look at.
One other question, how do these changes work with billing classification functionality?
Yeah, there's no intended change.
Yeah, okay. In what sense?
Yeah. So is there any change? I think is the person who asked was hoping that there was no change.
Yeah. So as far as right now, there's no intended change. Certainly, if there's issues, it's still preview. We do want to address any issues as it's in preview, and that's the feedback we were looking for on the slide. So if we see something that doesn't work as you expect, and just let us know, please, work case or some other mechanism, and we'll.
Yeah, great. We had a couple questions around linking the linkings between subledger and GL and all that. And the general answer, I think, is that none of that is really changed. So the links and everything, the voucher, the drill downs that you're expecting, that you're used to, will still work. If they don't, that's some feedback that we need, because it's probably a problem of some sort, or we can figure that out, but it's not expected to change any of that stuff.
That is correct. I mean, the voucher for the invoice is generated at the time of the subledger posting. We utilized that voucher that was generated at posting, to bring the data, the accounting, into GL and set up the links that were there previously.
Right. GL's always had the voucher, right? GL's got its own journal number too, but the voucher from the subledger's there as well. So no change.
There is one more question, a new one from Frank. Can the invoice be paid or settled before the accounting side is posted? If so, if the accounting structure is blocking the accounting posting, how to solve this? Ryan, you want to answer that?
Yeah. So today, that is one caveat that's called out in the feature description as well, that documents cannot be settled, or payments can't be made until that accounting is completed. So the question then is, well, what if I have an account structure problem that's blocking this accounting posting? And that is actually one of the use cases that we've discussed, is there could be a whole batch that fails, and it's largely because there was an account structure change that happened that was incorrect. So that account structure, either, hopefully the account structure change can be made, it'll be revalidated, and then it will let that whole batch go through and generate that accounting properly as soon as that account structure was corrected. If that isn't the case, it looks like there might be still something deeper happening, but that's how we intended the feature, that you can fix the account structure in one go. All of that batch of documents then can get their accounting journalized, and everything should go through properly. There is some validation on the accounting distributions right up front. So they really, I kind of have a small contrived example in my demo, allowing the accounting to happen, and then I made an error state, and then I tried to push it through. So generally speaking, that should give you a proper validation right on the distribution as it's being created, if it's invalid or not, right up front. Some of the other accounting that's happening after the fact, obviously those would be ones that would be a subject to the account structure during that journalization step, and that's the ones that you'd have to look at a little deeper and see if there's an error at the account structure. Correct that and let it go.
Cool. Yep. And one more thing I want to add, the new form, you saw documents pending accounting. Right now, that doesn't have a linking from free text invoice page, or we are on particular record. That linking is not there. We will be building that link that will help you to go to particular record from the journalization side. If one person is looking at that, and they can directly go to that reference record. So that will also come soon on that, which is not there right now in this, if you enable the feature. But yes, linking one will come. And if you have more feedback on that, please, use Yammer, Idea Portal, and share your feedback on that. I do have one interesting question, and maybe Jason, you can answer this. When we say for better performance with subledger journal transfer, use the async transfer mode and not the scheduled batch one. Do we have any scenario you can think of, Jason, where customers should use a scheduled batch job and not the async batch transfer mode?
There are not many, that's for sure. I mean, scheduled batch is more of a legacy option that we've had for many years, so we have not deprecated it, but there's been many enhancements gone in on the async transfer to reduce database transaction size, make it more efficient, not cause blocking, for journal postings and things like that, that have not gone into the scheduled batch. So with that, I highly recommend using the async transfer and turning on the performance features for the async transfer. But there was one scenario where a customer needed, I'm not exactly sure there's the reasons, but they needed to, block their accounting from going to GL, and they only wanted it transferred once a month. And from that perspective, the scheduled batch worked well for them to limit that, but that's the only scenario I've seen.
Good to know.
And we do have a plan to update the documentation for the subledger transfer to, to recommend async more clearly.
Perfect. Thank you, Eric, for that. Yeah. Team, if you have any other questions, this is the perfect time to ask.
What about intercompany invoices, as they are raised for the project module but come under free text invoice? Looks like that might be the last question. Yeah.
One more time, can you repeat, Eric?
Yep. The question is, what about intercompany invoices that are raised, I think, from the project module, but it creates free text invoices, not project invoices for that scenario for intercompany? I'm not familiar with the area. I'm just reading the question. Sorry.
Yeah, likewise, Eric, that's a great question. And I don't have context around the intercompany invoicing coming from project module directly. So I'll have to make sure that is a scenario that we give a good testing through as we get to the released state of the feature. So I don't have a direct answer.
In general, I would expect the free text invoice, if that's being generated as part of the posting of the project invoice, I'd expect the subledger posting of the free text invoice to happen, with that posting. That's typically how we handle those situations in the past. But the journalization would be delayed just like it is today, which should be fine. I don't anticipate any extra issues related to that. So.
And I think if there's if there is a restriction, it would get added. We know about it now. We'll review it and we'll add it to the docs article if there is any sort of a restriction.
Yeah, that's a good point. Brings up the one other question that has come before is, whether are there limitations, and there was one known with the Hungary localization. So if you have your environment or the legal entity essentially running in a Hungary country context, that would just simply fall back to the old, as mentioned before, it would fall back to the old logic and not split out the work. You wouldn't get the performance gain.
Yep. So if there's anything with these project invoices, we'll cover it, add it similar to these. If anything comes out of it. Thank you for the question.
Another great question I see during the demo, it seems the number of FTI has been used even if it's not posted. Basically, the question is it possible to post FTI 1 getting posted before FTI 2? So my answer would be, when you are running it in interactive mode, you are controlling which particular free text invoice you are posting first or next. But when you are in the batch mode, at that time, yes, it can happen. It may post FTI 2 first and FTI 1 later. So that is definitely a possibility.
All right, one other question just coming in for testing around fixed assets with the free text invoice, and if that's been tested fully. We did have one test pass through fixed asset adding to a free text invoice, and again, that posting should happen as it's expected, and just the accounting at the journalization step was on its own path, and that. So we did have that test run through. So if there's any more issues that get uncovered, again, in preview here, let us know. We'll get them addressed for release date.
Yeah, I mean, all subledger postings are still happening in the posting step. So if you've got, updates that have to happen to the asset subledger as well as the AR subledger, those things happen in the main database transaction, as Ryan pointed out. It's just the generation of the accounting for the invoice that's delayed.
Yep, this is a super important point. Thank you, Sriram, for asking that. I think we are good. I don't see any more new questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for asking these great questions. Thank you for your time. I will give the floor to Brad over here.
All right, thanks, Saurabh. To all of our attendees out there, I have posted a link to a short survey in the Q&A panel. We would love to get your feedback on today's session and hear what you'd like to see in future events. Thank you for your participation on that. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the TechTalk's Community Dynamics page within the coming weeks. And finally, we'll end today's broadcast by extending a big thank you to our presenters and audience for joining us today. Have a great day ahead, everyone.